Randi, and I can promise you that in the next 30 minutes, you're going to meet some very interesting people who claim that they can do amazing things. So let's begin our search. If you will, step with me through the looking glass. I need a volunteer, and let me see. This is a fine-looking bunch here. We've never met before. How do you do? Your name is?
Richard.
Richard, join me over here, if you would, please. That's your chair. They don't give me a chair. And, Richard, we're going to do a bit of an experiment I think might prove to you that sometimes the closer you are to things, the less you see. I have here a handkerchief in my pocket. You can see that plainly. Watch very carefully. I'm going to cause this handkerchief to do something rather strange. Now, as you know, I'm a trickster and a conjurer, but... strange. I'm going to make it... Wait a minute. If you tie it in a knot, I found, Richard, that kills it. And I'm tying it in a tight knot, like I think it's dead. I don't hear anything. Do you hear anything?
No.
If you hear something from your handkerchief, you're in big trouble, you see? Watch very carefully. This is what we call sleight of hand, you see? I take the handkerchief and I do this with it, and it vanishes, and it ends up here. Of course, it's the only other place it could be. You see, that's what they call sleight of hand, and conjurers do this sort of thing all the time. Now, I'm going to give you a second chance. Ready? Watch very carefully now. A 1. It's very hard to tell. This is very hard to tell. A 1, a 2. Can you tell which hand it's in? It's hard to say, isn't it?
It is hard to say.
Yes.
I'll go for that one.
You'll go for that one. Well, that would happen to be wrong. Now, you won one, and you lose the other. You see, actually, you lose this one, too. It's a very strange thing. Now, watch very carefully. You folks in the audience and at home, of course, can see what I've done with the handkerchief. But this gentleman, because he's so close to me, has a difficult time of it. Now, I'm going to make it reappear on top of my head. As you can see, that's very dangerous because it's very slippery up there. Watch very carefully now. 1, 2, and I'm not ready, and they know I'm not ready, you see, but you don't know how ready I am not. Watch very carefully. The next time I say that third number, it will be on top of my head. Ready? 1, 2. You weren't watching. It was over on the floor all the time. 3, I told you not to take your eyes off the top of my head, didn't I? Richard, thank you very much for coming. Let's hear a big round of applause for Richard. What you've just witnessed is proof that it's very easy to be too close to an event to be able to judge it properly. So watch out. Now, the eternal question, is there life after death? Tonight, we'll be meeting people who say they can look back into the past, reach into the future, and move between life and death. First, is this a picture of a dear departed soul? We begin our quest with a lady who sketches what she believes to be portraits of spirit people. And these are examples of her work. Please welcome my first guest, Coral Polge. And this is Stephen O'Brien, who assists Coral with her pictures. And could you tell us now what person in the audience might be able to identify with the spirit picture that you're going to produce?
No, we don't understand quite how this works, but we have to make the link with the spirit and then hope that it will make sense to somebody in the audience.
I see. Well, I'm going to back off the set now and just let you do your thing.
I will try to draw someone from the world of spirit. Stephen will tune in to the same spirit, and if what we're getting makes sense to one of you, will you please answer? Put your hand up. Obviously got a lady coming through, a lady who makes me feel terribly, terribly short of breath. She would have suffered either with heart trouble or possibly even have passed with a chest condition. But she's showing me herself a little younger than she went to spirit. She's got lovely thick hair, which I feel in the latter part of her life was much, much thinner. Have you got any contact with her, Stephen?
I don't know if this means anything to anybody. I have heard the name of Butler given to me, B-U-T-L-E-R, but I'm not sure yet, unless I'm told, whether this is her or the person we want. I wonder if there's anybody in our audience that either holds the surname of Butler or knows that name well, please. Do we have anybody there? Do we get a voice? Are you Butler?
I am, yes.
That is your name?
Yes.
Who is William Butler that's calling in from the other side of life? Someone that was known as William, passed over quite a while back, I've got to say. I don't know if you've heard of that name, have you? William Butler?
Sorry.
Don't make it fit, whatever you do.
Hello, sir, there. Is this making sense to you of a lady that passed in the way I described, possible heart condition, angina, I feel she went silently, quietly in her sleep after quite a bit of illness, and she brings back memories here of the war years and the bombing.
I know a man called William Butler.
Good.
Whose wife passed away with angina.
Yes.
But I've got to say that that picture doesn't look like...
The picture doesn't fit with her. That's fine. Sometimes we work like that.
Right. We may have two links here.
We might have, yes. We'll do what we can to sort that out.
Everything that Stephen has said, it rings true, but unfortunately the face doesn't.
I see.
I cannot place the face.
Right.
No.
As long as the details are right, we may be able to piece it together if we can. We're working under very difficult circumstances here. We're trying our best.
Can you? Let's see. Come on, sort yourselves out.
We'll try and place the face. What we normally do is try to link through and get the name of the communicator, but we can't demand that. But if you take this back to that connection, you will find you said a photograph, Coral, of this lady, and it's something to do with the bombing. So I would like to say to you, the audience, and the television station to follow you back and have a look and see if you can place her. At least try that.
Certainly will, yeah.
Would you do that?
Will do,
Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you very much, Coral. Now, Coral said that the face she has drawn should mean something to somebody in our audience. Is there anybody here who can relate to this picture? Please vote if you think you recognize the face. Well, 10 people say they recognize this face, which is odd since you said, Coral, that only one person should relate to it. Perhaps this drawing is not as specific as you think? Well, thank you very much anyway, Coral and Stephen. The claims of spiritualism have been with us for years. In 1917, two young girls in Yorkshire fooled the world with these photos of fairies. One of their main supporters was the great writer Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who was a fervent spiritualist himself. And here we are by the famous waterfall at the back of the Wrights' home in Cottingley, where photograph number 1, the most important of all 5, was taken by Elsie of Francis behind the cutout. I'm taking the place of Francis. For you see, it was the waterfall that was the clue to the whole thing that should have tripped everybody off to the secret of the hoax. The waterfall in the original picture is heavily blurred because it took at least a 10-second exposure to make that photograph, while the wings of the fairies are perfectly sharp and clear, and those wings should have been fluttering very rapidly. An obvious clue, but no one spotted it. In later life, Elsie explained how she used these illustrations from a popular children's book.
I stretched them out, took off the gauze, and left a bit of gauze just round the waist and put the wings on, and then we cut them out.
So even someone as brilliant as Conan Doyle was taken in by these fake photos of fairies. Another of his supernatural enthusiasms was the work of spiritualists and mediums. In Conan Doyle's day, mediums tended to work in darkened rooms. Nowadays, they often perform in more cheerful surroundings. Currently one of Britain's most successful mediums, please welcome my next guest, Maureen Flynn.
Good evening, everybody. I hope to be able to make a link with someone here tonight and bring a loved one through from the world of spirit. I have been given the name of Taylor. Now, someone here tonight either is Mr. Taylor or the name of Taylor will have a close connection with you.
My mother's maiden name is Taylor.
Because you see, I have a gentleman here who links with that name very clearly, and he would have been quite elderly when he passed, and he passed with a heart condition, chest, lungs, heart condition, and he would have linked with your mum, and he came very clearly to bring his love to you. I feel he's your granddad. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
And who's Jimmy? Do you know who Jimmy is?
Can't
Or
picture
James?
Jimmy.
James? I'd love you to find Jimmy, James, because I feel that there's a link in the family there for that name. Hang on a minute. Do you know who Doris is?
No, I can't picture that either.
Okay. I know I made a mistake linking this gentleman with Doris, because he doesn't look a bit like a Doris, as I said. But I do know that I'm in the same area here. I have a lady, and I don't know whether I'm saying Doris, Dorothy, or Doreen, but the Dory bit is right. And I know that I'm in this area here. Can someone here take Doris? Can you place the... I want to say Dory, but I know it's a name
Doris,
like...
You're right.
Doris. And the young man who passed in some kind of crash, some kind of accident. Does that make sense to you?
I mean, we're on a programme and everybody wants the truth, so you've got to go a little further.
I'm terribly sorry. The name of John I want to give too. Does John make sense to you?
No, but I think you got him crossed with the last caller. It's James or Jimmy.
James, Jimmy. Please forgive me. I'll have to let you be the judge of whether that makes sense to you, because obviously when you're trying to put a lot in very quickly, then you do get these sort of links. But he passed very suddenly and very quickly. And it's funny because I could feel something over his face. I could feel something over his face. As if he would have had some kind of...
This is most unfortunate you picked me, actually, because I'm a slightly non-believer.
But does it make sense to you?
Yeah, it does make sense.
That's right. That's fine. Because I just felt... And he reached out his hand. He reached out his hand.
Yes, you've got my husband, so... but I'm really the wrong person for this programme.
Well, I'm terribly sorry. You should have told your husband that. Not me.
Oh, God. Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that obviously through all this he's been trying to reach you, and just to let you know that he's pleased you're here. But I hope that maybe his link with you will bring you some joy that he's here with you tonight, and a lot of love.
Well, I want us to look carefully at the connections that you say you made. Let's take a vote. First, how many people in our audience tonight can connect with the name Taylor? About 30%. And now, how many people can relate to the condition of the grandfather? About 55%. So to sum up, about a third connect with the name Taylor, and over half connect with the details of the grandfather. Well, that's very interesting. Maureen's statements seem to be more general than each of you thought before we took the vote. Make of that what you will. Let's consider whether you might have forgotten other details which none of you picked up. Do people remember accurately what takes place in a reading? Well, we have with us tonight Mr. Rod Beale. Mr. Beale, you're a satisfied client of Maureen's, I understand. Is that correct?
Yeah.
She did a reading for you not too long ago, which I understand you think is a very good reading.
Yes, she did.
A few simple questions, if I may. First of all, how long did the thing last, first of all, the reading?
About half an hour.
About half an hour. How many names, pardon me, did she give you during that period of half an hour?
Probably half a dozen.
About half a dozen. And did they all hit?
Not everyone.
How many
but
did
they
would
had
you
a
say
similar
hit?
sounding, like Doreen, Maureen, that type of thing.
Well, you were kind enough to give us a tape recording of that reading done by Maureen Flynn for you. And for your information, during your reading, Maureen Flynn tried these names, and they are on the tape of the reading that you're referring to. Alan, Alfred, Alice, Anne, Bill, Charlie, Colin, Connie, David, Derek, Eileen, Ellen, Flory, Frank, Fred, George, Jim, Joe, John, Karen, Catherine, Kevin, Lillian, Lisa, Liz, Lynn, Mark, Mary, May, Michael, Rob, Ron, Shirley, Sydney, Stanley, Sid, and Steve. That's 37 names, and she also asked you if you could connect with any name beginning with an N or an L, and you could not do so. Now, in the ones that were accepted, and you did accept 9 of the 37 that were given, these were some of the categories: a son, a lodger, a brother, a nephew, an adopted nephew, a grandfather, a fellow worker, a cousin, and the neighbor's dog. Now,
that's right out of context.
I'm sorry?
Right out of context.
We have a transcript of it right here, sir, and you may have that transcript to refer to it, and the names, I think, are outlined there, all 37 of them.
You can analyze anything. You can analyze Encyclopedia Britannica. Mr. Beale is here because he felt that what he actually got on that tape made sense to him, very much so.
Private sittings, one must also remember that a person just cannot, in the first sitting, be absolutely sure. If you're going to make a research of these things, there should be a number of sittings taken with the medium, and over a long period of time, checking the results. I've been a medium for 60 years, and I've always said, if I give a 70 or 80% perfect demonstration, I do very well.
Archdeacon Perry, is it? How do you do, sir? I wonder what your opinion of this whole thing is. Would you share it with us?
The veil between this world and the next is a very odd veil, and you can occasionally see through it. Not as often as mediums and psychics think, but it certainly can be seen through occasionally.
But I do think a lot of it comes down to probabilities. And here we see the obvious problem that we disagree about what it means. You gave a good example in that tape there with the 37 names. People remember the ones that make sense and they forget the ones that don't make sense. But we're all left with different opinions. Some people feel like I do, well, there are so many names, we could all connect up to it, it means nothing to me. Other people, when it touches something important to them and stirs emotions in them, they feel genuine emotions that we shouldn't just wash away and say are worthless. I would love to understand what's going on, but I'm afraid I don't.
Well, thank you all for your comments, and thank you very much, Maureen, for taking part. We've looked at contacting the dead, but what about catching killers? Some psychics go so far as to offer help to the police. In order to see how useful this is, we prepared an experiment using this collection of instruments which might have been used to commit crimes, and then again, they might not. Is it possible for a psychic to read the history of an instrument just by touching? My final guest claims to be able to do this. Please welcome Nella Jones. Now, Nella, you regularly approach the police with information you believe you have about crimes. The test you and I have agreed upon involves a number of objects which you've never seen before. We're going to see what information you can get from them. Are these visual images, or do you get sort of an emotional impression, or what is it?
It's sometimes visual, sometimes it's as if it's an inner knowledge.
But one thing that bothers me now,
Yes.
Suppose you were to handle an item like this, couldn't you perhaps pick up vibrations from the person who sharpened the item, or who perhaps manufactured it, or the person who sold it, and perhaps give wrong information to the police that way?
The police don't often give me tools like this to handle, James. They come along and say, well, we've reached a dead end. Can you throw any light on it whatsoever? And I never say, yes, I'll come and solve the case. I say, I'll do my best.
We have here 6 different instruments or items or whatever they all sealed up in plastic bags. Please unwrap them while I explain to the audience what they are. Any or all of these could have been connected with a serious crime involving a loss of life. The history of each object is known. They've been individually wrapped until now to avoid the possibility of psychic contamination. All right, which ones do you think are most likely, then? Let's put it that way.
Well, these 3, I felt, that's just a little thing. That's just I think. Could have been quite innocent, but getting into a lock of some sort. These 2, as I say, I felt glass with that one, as if it could have been used to... I feel glass. I just don't know. As I feel it, I'm just picking up glass. Not doing bad, are we? This one, God knows why. I'm picking up a heavy tyre, a heavy vehicle tyre. So I don't know what that's being used for. Sorry, my darling, best I can do.
Let's look at your results. I know you make no claims for accuracy, but it's still interesting that you examined 6 objects, you got no information from 3 of them, and you got incorrect information from the remaining 3. I wonder what the police would make of that.
James, you're trying to explain all that I do by logic.
Oh, no.
What I do is illogical.
It's been a most intriguing demonstration, and we'd like to thank you very much, Nella, for taking part. As Nella says, psychics often offer information to help the police with their investigations, and the police acknowledge this, although they say they never approach psychics themselves, and there are no official police psychics. Last August, New Scotland Yard set up a special review to investigate the use of information received from psychics. The police told us there is no recorded instance of psychics solving a criminal case or providing evidence or information which led directly to its solution. They also said they do not endorse psychics in any way. If this is the case, the question remains, should the police spend time and money following up the information that psychics offer? Isn't it time there was a clear policy on this? The popular press are quick to okay any opportunity to promote the psychic's claims to help the police, but rarely investigate the results. During the hunt for the Yorkshire Ripper, the Sunday People asked a leading medium what the Ripper looked like. She produced this likeness, said his name was Johnny or Ronnie, and declared that he lived in Tyneside or Wareside. All wrong. Later, the Daily Star joined the circus by consulting another medium who provided psychic drawings of the Ripper's friends, relatives, and even his car mechanic. Also wrong. One wonders why the newspapers insist on perpetrating this nonsense when the police themselves do not endorse it. And perhaps uncritical press coverage like this encourages anxious friends and relatives to take information offered by psychics too seriously. In our studio today is Mary Asprey, a longtime friend of the Lamplugh family, whose estate agent daughter, Susie, disappeared 5 years ago. Mary, you've had quite a few connections with quite a few psychics over the years, haven't you?
I certainly have.
And have they helped you at all?
I think that in many ways they have helped.
Now, what is this suitcase we have here?
This suitcase, plus the suitcase behind me, is filled with letters from, I prefer to call people intuitive people that wrote to either the police or to the Lamplugh family, suggesting things that might have happened to Susie Lamplugh. You have to remember that Susie is missing. She's still missing. Nobody knows what happened. For Diana Lamplugh and for myself, who was a friend, some of these letters gave us a new lead, a new idea. The police also a new thought.
I see.
And it has been extremely helpful. What
I
I have done is act as a buffer for the family, which I think has been very important, because although most of the psychics have been incredibly sensitive if they have phoned the family with information, and one thing I would ask them not to ever phone a family direct, try and speak to a friend, because it's very distressing. But one of the things I really feel one should sort of think is that don't dismiss anything.
And Christine Boxall is a different case altogether. I understand that your young son, Lee, vanished some 2 years ago. What have the psychics done for you, Christine?
I've been to many psychics, different mediums and clairvoyants. Some have told me that he's dead, and some have told me he's alive. It's really distressing when they tell me that he's dead, but you see, I've got to know one way or another,
of course,
where he is. I mean, we just, at the end of the day, just don't know where he is.
And Christine, have the psychics managed to find your son?
No.
They haven't.
No.
Well, I want to thank Mrs. Asprey and Mrs. Boxall for coming here tonight. I earnestly hope that these missing children can be found. Despite suitcases full of letters from hundreds of psychics and years of following these leads, Lee Boxall is still missing. Susie Lamplugh is still missing. Ladies and gentlemen, you've seen the evidence. Make up your own minds. I'm James Randi. Good night.